For more insight on today's memorial service and the next steps in the papal process, we are joined by Colm Flynn, Vatican correspondent with Catholic News Agency. Colm, it's good to see you again. Thanks for making the time.
Natasha, always great to see you, and good evening from the Eternal City.
As the services, as the remembrances are coming to a close, how will history and Catholics around the world remember Pope Francis?
You know what I thought was amazing, Natasha, because remember, since the very beginning of his papacy in 2013, Pope Francis said he always wanted to be with the people on the peripheries and the poor. And there you had the incredible, stunning St. Peter's Square packed with around 250,000 people, the square and the streets around it, in the vicinity of the Vatican, people who have come for the funeral. You also had, of course, up near the very top, on the left, you had the clergy in white, purple and red, and then on the right, all the delegates and the diplomats and the heads of state in black. So you had all the mighty and the powerful people there. And what did Pope Francis do at the very end? He didn't want to stay and be buried in the tomb under St. Peter's Basilica. He turned his back on the powerful and the mighty. He went to the Basilica of St. Mary Major, around 20 minutes away, and the last people he passed were the poor and the needy of Rome, who had gathered on the steps of that basilica to pay their last respects, each holding a white rose. He was brought in and he was laid to rest. It was a beautiful, symbolic way for the world to say goodbye to Pope Francis.
That is fascinating. And so you were just talking about this. In one sentence, what message do you think Pope Francis was saying, being the first pontiff in decades to be buried outside of the Vatican? What is the significance of that choice in the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore?
I think 120 years is the last time someone was buried outside of the Vatican. He wanted to be close to the people and close to the poor, not within the walls of the Apostolic Palace. And his message was always, in one word, mercy.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. What is the next step now in the process of selecting the new Pope?
Well, we have 9 days of mourning to let the dust settle on what has just happened, and people will reflect on the legacy. They'll look at the wonderful moments of Pope Francis's pontificate. They'll look at the more challenging moments as well, the moments of confusion for many Catholics. But then we're into the conclave, and I can tell you, Natasha, the incredible thing about living in Rome at the moment is that anyone wearing a red hat, walking around the streets, any cardinal is being flanked and crowded by journalists. In fact, there's one Spanish journalist who's getting into a little bit of trouble at the moment because she keeps running up to cardinals and asking them, do they want to be the next pope? But you know, there's a saying that those who really know are not talking and those who are talking don't really know. So I have to preface what I'm about to say, that it's the Holy Spirit who makes the ultimate decision. But there you go, on your screen, the top cardinals, who could be the next pope? And there are many different factors that play into this, but I'll give you the front runner at the moment. If you were going to walk into the bookies, it's the man on the left of your screen, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. He is the most experienced diplomat at the Vatican, very well liked and respected by world leaders across the globe. Does he have the charisma and the warmth of Pope Francis? No, he doesn't, but he has got a deep institutional knowledge of how the Vatican actually runs and operates. And Pope Francis, he was a close aide to him for his entire pontificate. So he would be seen as a close, like a safe pair of hands for the church, a steady the ship, if you like. Next to him, if you wanted to move outside of Italy, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. Very nice man. I've interviewed him a number of times. He's from Manila in the Philippines. You know what? They actually call him the Asian Pope Francis because he grew up, like Pope Francis, close to the poor, close to people on the peripheries. He knows what it means to suffer. So he can relate to people and he has a big heart. You know, the list goes on and on there. I can see an American name in there as well. But at the very end, Cardinal Robert Sarah on the right of your screen. He is the one from Africa who people think could have a chance. He's more on the conservative, traditional side. But, you know, we have to keep reminding ourselves that that is not a fringe group, even if some networks and some analysts would like you to think that the conservative side of the Catholic Church is just based in America and it's small and it's fringe. It is not. If you look at the top 10 mass-going countries in the world today, practicing Catholics, most of them are in Africa or they're in Asia. They're traditional countries with more traditional values, and they want to see those values reflected in the Catholic Church and promoted by the future Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's incredible context. Thank you for sharing that. Is there a path to sainthood for Pope Francis?
You know what? I keep saying that because he has just passed, and we're going to be looking at his legacy and the things that he did, that we shouldn't criticize and we shouldn't canonize straight away either. I know Pope John Paul II was maybe an exception to that. There will be, of course, people who will call for his canonization because of his incredible acts of mercy, his acts of humanity that I got to witness on many occasions, from South Sudan to Mongolia to all over the world. But there were difficult points of his papacy as well. There were many Catholics who felt ostracized. You know, they would point to the fact that he always talked about synodality and bringing people together, hearing everyone's point of view. But the feeling around the Vatican and Rome, if I'm going to be honest and straight with you, Natasha, was that if you were more conservative leaning within the hierarchy of the church, an archbishop or a cardinal, you weren't really going to progress or get any position of any significance under Pope Francis. Certainly most of the cardinals that he appointed would be more on the progressive side. He was trying to shape the college so that, I suppose, if you were going to put a bet, you would say that it increased the likelihood that his successor would be along the same mindset and have the same vision for the church as him. But, you know, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a biblical scholar. Whether he'll be canonized or not, or made a saint, the road to sainthood is a long time. He will need a couple of miracles. But you know what? We'll be talking again if that happens, Natasha, here live on air.
Yeah, appreciate it. Always appreciate you coming on. Colm Flynn, thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.